Welcome back to the Daily Dialogue. I'm Alex, and I'm joined by Sophia. Today, we're talking about a silent thief. It's something many people actually think is a strength, but in reality, it's a heavy chain that keeps you from ever being truly happy or productive. We're talking about perfectionism.
Hi Alex. It's funny because in job interviews, when people ask, "What's your greatest weakness?" so many people say, "Oh, I'm a bit of a perfectionist." They say it with a smile, like it's a secret way of saying they are amazing. But if they actually knew what true perfectionism feels like, they wouldn't brag about it.
Exactly. Real perfectionism isn't about doing a great job. It's about the paralyzing fear of making a mistake. It's not a pursuit of excellence, it's a defensive move. It's the belief that, if I look perfect, do everything perfect, and live perfect, I can avoid the pain of judgment or shame.
That is a huge distinction. Excellence is about growth, perfectionism is about protection. I've struggled with this my whole life, Alex. I remember being in university and spending 6 hours on the first paragraph of an essay because it didn't feel right. I wasn't being a good student, I was being a prisoner of my own high standards.
That's what psychologists call analysis paralysis. You are so afraid of doing it wrong that you don't do it at all. Or you do it at the very last minute under extreme stress because the fear of the deadline finally becomes bigger than the fear of the mistake.
It's a miserable way to live. And the irony is, perfectionists often achieve less than people who are okay with being imperfect. Because the imperfect people are out there actually doing things, making mistakes, and learning, while the perfectionist is still at home polishing their first draft.
There's a famous study about a pottery class. The teacher split the class into two groups. Group A was told they would be graded only on the quality of one single, perfect, pot. Group B was told they would be graded on the quantity, the total weight of all the pots they made.
Let me guess. The quantity group actually ended up making the best pots?
Spot on. While Group A sat around debating what a perfect pot looks like, Group B was busy getting their hands dirty. They made hundreds of pots, and through those mistakes, they naturally learned how to make beautiful, high-quality work. They failed their way to excellence.
That's such a powerful lesson for life. We can think our way to perfection. But you can only work your way to being good. But Alex, where does this come from? Why are some of us so obsessed with being flawless?
A lot of it comes from our childhood and the performance-based love we see in society. We are told from a young age, A+ is good, B is okay, C is a failure. We start to believe that our value as a human being is equal to our achievements. If I fail at a task, I am a failure.
It's the identity tangle. My work and myself are tied together. If someone criticizes my project, I feel like they are attacking my soul. That's why perfectionists take feedback so poorly. It feels like a life or death situation.
And then there's social media, the perfection engine. We are constantly looking at everyone else's final edit. We see their perfect vacations, their perfect bodies, their perfect careers. We compare our behind-the-scenes footage with their highlight reel.
And we feel like we're losing. I see this with people learning English all the time. They want to sound like a BBC News anchor on day one. And because they don't, they feel embarrassed. They don't want to speak until they can speak perfectly, so they never practice.
It's the fluent or silent trap. But language is a tool for connection, not a performance for a grade. If you can communicate your idea, you've succeeded, even if your grammar is messy. Perfectionism is the enemy of connection because it makes you focus on yourself instead of the other person.
Wow. Perfectionism is actually a form of egocentrism in a way. You're so worried about how you look that you aren't really present in the conversation or the work. You're just looking in a mental mirror the whole time.
Deep down, perfectionism is the voice of the inner critic turned up to maximum volume. It's a constant, not good enough, playing on loop in your head. It kills creativity because creativity requires the freedom to play, to be messy, and to be bad at first.
So, how do we turn down the volume? How do we move from perfection to progress?
That's exactly what we're going to dive into in the next part. We'll talk about the 70% rule, the joy of being bad, and how to finally fire your inner critic.
I can't wait. I think my inner critic needs a long vacation.
Let's take a quick break. Stay with us. And we are back. Before the break, Sophia, we were talking about how perfectionism is actually a form of protection, a shield we use to hide our flaws from the world. But the problem with a shield is that it's heavy. You can't run a marathon if you're carrying a heavy iron shield.
That's such a vivid image, Alex. You're so busy protecting yourself from judgment that you can't actually move forward. I've realized that perfectionism is also a massive waste of time. If I spend 10 hours on a task that only requires 2, I haven't done a better job, I've just stolen 8 hours from my life.
Exactly. It's diminishing returns. The first 80% of the quality takes 20% of the time. But that last 5% of perfection, that takes 80% of your energy. Is it worth it? Usually, the answer is no. This is where the good enough philosophy comes in.
Good enough. That sounds so mediocre, Alex. My inner perfectionist is screaming right now. Laughs. It feels like I'm giving up on my standards.
I know it sounds that way, but listen, good enough isn't about being lazy. It's about being effective. It's about deciding that this is functional, this is clear, and this is ready for the world. It's about realizing that done is better than perfect but invisible.
Done is better than perfect. I see that in business all the time. The most successful companies launch a minimum viable product. They put something messy out there, see how people use it, and then they fix the mistakes. They don't wait 3 years to make it perfect in a secret lab.
Because they know that feedback is the only way to reach excellence. Perfectionists hate feedback because they see it as evidence of failure. But a good enough person sees feedback as data for improvement. It's a completely different mindset.
So, how do we train our brains to accept good enough? I mean, my brain is programmed to look for the one tiny typo in a 50-page document and ignore all the great content.
You need to practice strategic imperfection. This is a fun exercise. Purposely make a small, harmless mistake. Send an email with one tiny typo. Leave one dish in the sink overnight. Post a photo on social media that isn't perfectly edited.
Oh, that makes my skin crawl just thinking about it.
I know. But do you know what happens when you do that? You realize that the world doesn't end. No one calls you to tell you you're a failure. The sun still rises. You are teaching your nervous system that you are safe even when you aren't perfect.
So, it's exposure therapy for perfectionists. I'm exposing myself to the horror of being a normal human being. I think I can try that. Maybe I'll leave a typo in my next text message to you, Alex.
I'll be looking for it. But let's talk about the 70% rule. This is a strategy used by some high-level athletes and CEOs. They aim to perform at about 70% of their maximum, perfect effort on a daily basis.
Only 70%? Why not 100%?
Because if you try to give 100% every single day, you will burn out in a month. But if you give a solid 70%, you are consistent. You show up every day. You don't have peaks and valleys of productivity, you have a steady, sustainable climb. Consistency beats intensity every single time.
That is a game changer. Especially for people learning English. If you try to study for 5 hours one day a week, 100% effort, you'll hate it. But if you listen to a podcast for 20 minutes every day, 70% effort, you'll be fluent in a year.
Exactly. The perfectionist wants the big win immediately. They want that A+ or the native accent right now. And when they don't get it, they quit. The good enough person just keeps walking. They know that progress is a messy, zigzag line, not a straight arrow.
I think we also need to change how we talk to ourselves. That inner critic we mentioned earlier, it's so mean. I would never say the things I say to myself to a friend.
That's the friendship test. If your friend made a mistake, would you say, "You're an idiot, you've ruined everything, you should just give up"? Of course not. You'd say, "It's okay, everyone makes mistakes, let's see how we can fix it." Why don't we offer that same grace to ourselves?
We are our own worst bosses. We need to fire the critic and hire a coach. A critic just points out what's wrong. A coach acknowledges the mistake but then says, "Okay, what's the next move? How do we get better?"
I love that. Fire the critic, hire a coach. And finally, we need to find joy in the process. Perfectionism is result-oriented. You're only happy if the final result is perfect. But the result only lasts for a second. The process of doing the work is where you spend 99% of your life.
If you only enjoy the finish line, you're spending your whole life in a state of unhappiness until the very end. But if you enjoy the running, the struggle, the learning, the mistakes, then you've already won, regardless of the result.
That is the ultimate perfectionism killer. When the joy of doing the thing is bigger than the fear of failing at the thing, you are truly free. You become more creative, more brave, and ironically, you actually end up doing better work.
This has been so helpful, Alex. I feel like I can finally put down that heavy shield we talked about. I'm ready to be perfectly imperfect.
Me too, Sophia. I'm going to go make some good enough coffee right now. That's the spirit. To everyone listening, be kind to yourselves today. Give yourself permission to be a beginner. Give yourself permission to be messy.
Progress over perfection. Always. Thanks for joining us today.
See you in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.